Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. A couple quick announcements. As always, please stay muted. There will be time for questions at the end, so you can add those to the chat as we go, or just hold them until the end, and there'll be an opportunity to come off of mute and ask. This is our last gardening talk of 2023. We're very excited that it's about bats. We hope you've enjoyed all the topics this year. If you've missed a talk, the recordings are available on our website, so feel free to check those out. And we hope you'll join us for the 2024 series, which is going to begin in January, with Phenology, Tracking Seasonal Changes in Plants and Animals, presented by Lisa Wallace, an associate professor of biology at Old Dominion University. Our other planned topics include reliable native perennials, roses, salt-tolerant plants, tomatoes, and creating winter interest in the garden. So with that, tonight we are very happy to have Leslie Sturgis. She founded and leads the Bat Conservation and Rescue of Virginia, an organization that is dedicated to inspiring conservation through art and action by providing opportunities for the public to engage in bat watching, partnering with other citizen-led conservation organizations, and encouraging young people to engage through art and expression. Leslie's been working with bats since attending Bat World Sanctuary's Bat Boot Camp, which sounds like so much fun, in 2001. Over the course of her outreach and bat rehabilitation career, she's handled well over 2,000 bats and has hosted all but one of the Mid-Atlantic's native bat species, in addition to brief encounters with several mega bat species in captive and rehabilitation settings. She trained with Bat Conservation International in field methods and is a member of the Northeast Bat Working Group. She works with wildlife biologists from federal and regional agencies and advises on species behavior and presence to assist regional management decisions. As a retired park naturalist and former zookeeper, Leslie brings in-depth knowledge of ecology and natural history to inform and engage audiences through educational programs to further bat conservation in Virginia and beyond. All right, thank you for being here tonight, Leslie, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you all so much. I'm thrilled to see such a big crowd here tonight. So I do have a presentation for you. We'll do that. And then toward the end, I actually have a bat here who will appear on camera, so you'll be able to see her and whether or not she wants to cooperate. So just a little bit about bats and why I do bats is that I've always been a fan of nature's underdogs. I very much enjoyed snakes and insects as a child, and just through my career, I've sort of settled on working with lesser loved species. So bats just sort of came naturally to me as I got older. And I find one of the reasons they're so compelling is that they do everything that a larger mammal does in a very small package. And they are surprisingly long-lived, and they have an awful lot of social intelligence, at least most of our species that we know of do. So it's hard to get to know bats when all you see is a little shadow like through the night sky. And you might know what they're doing or what they're about and why they're important, but it's kind of hard to really think about things that we don't commonly encounter. And so I'm trying to, just elevate what people know about bats to put them on par with monarchs and bees and things that people tend to just bluebirds that people adore because they can see them and know that they're doing something to help them. And bats, it's a little harder to get at that. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start the presentation. She says, there it is. Okay, so I just want to talk I'm going to stick mostly to here in Virginia because we can talk about that globally all day long, but I'm sure you would be crying and hungry by the time I was done with that. So we're just going to stick to Virginia. And let me see. Why is my screen not advancing? Hold on. I may have to restart this if it's not going to cooperate, but let's try it again. Let me stop and restart this. Something. Right? Oh, goodness. All right. I have not had this happen before. All right. I apologize. Always fun times with technology. This was all working beautifully when we tested it. Let me try see if I can share it a different way. Ah, there we go. Okay. And ta-da! All right. So bats. There are a lot of bats. They're the second largest group of mammals on the planet. There are currently about 1,462 species described. They are the only mammal capable of true flight. They don't glide, they power themselves through flapping. They are mostly insectivores, but when you have 1,460 odd species, there's a lot of diversity. So there are some that specialize in eating frogs, some that specialize in eating fish. We have our very famous blood feeders. There are nectarivores, there are frugivores. So just a ton of different strategies to get through life, but mostly bugs. They, because of their diversity, have a lot of different roosting strategies. And they also are really interesting in that they are warm-blooded because they're mammals, even that's sort of an old term. We prefer endotherm, which is an internal metabolism, but they can change their body's metabolism depending on the environment and the needs that they're undergoing at any given time, and particularly seasonally. And so these little guys are out there breaking all the small mammal rules because they are really long-lived. This little bat that's up here in the corner of the screen is a Brandt's bat, and that's a European species. It tops out as an adult at 4 grams. One of those guys was recaptured in the wild, 41 years old. So that's a 4-gram animal, which is about the size of a ruby-throated hummingbird, going for 40 years. So you don't get to live that long and not know anything. So they tend to have a lot of ability to retain information, you know, mapping and where to find the bugs and where's the water and where are my friends, and I go and hibernate in this cave and I live in this barn, and they remember that stuff from year to year. They also have an incredibly low reproductive rate. Most of our bats only have 2 pups a year, and some of them only have 1 pup, and perhaps not even every year. So they're not like mice. They aren't having litter after litter after litter, and they're not able to fill an entire empty niche if something happens to the population like mice can do. They also, for a teeny tiny thing, inhabit a lot of space. So our bat, the hoary bat, is about 30 grams, so just an ounce. And that bat may be migrating between Canada and Mexico. So these guys are doing what songbirds are doing, but doing it at night. And they have the same sorts of energy requirements and the same need to change habitats seasonally. So back to the flying thing, because they're mammals, because they're vertebrates, we share a similar body plan. So, you know, you've got your central spine with the skull at one end and the tail at the other. And then we have, you know, the forelimbs coming off the shoulders and the hind limbs coming off the hips. So it's basic vertebrate body plan. With bats, their wings are structured from very elongated fingers, the metacarpals that are the bones of your hand that are encased in your palm. Bats don't have that. So it's the metacarpals plus the phalanges make the struts of the wing. But looking at this wing structure, you can see there's far more to it than just the fingers or the hand. The order that encompasses all of the bats is Chiroptera, which roughly translates as hand wing. But again, it's way more than the hands involved in the wing. On the left-hand side, you can see comparison between humans, birds, and bats. And you'll note birds deal with flight by actually having a lot of those bones sort of fused and stiffened. So with birds, the forearm and the phalanges and the metacarpals are all sort of fused together and form this really strong leading edge of the wing. And then the feathers make up the flight membrane or the flight surface. Whereas with bats, it's those extremely long, elongated metacarpals and phalanges hitched together by a skin that's called patagia. And the skin is actually like 2 layers thick and incredibly flexible. But what it allows for is for a really flexible flight. Whereas birds, they can be pretty agile, but they can't quite do what bats do. And this is what bats do. This is in super slow motion in a lab. It has no visible light, only the camera can see. And this bat is using echolocation to target these insects. And it is happening slowly enough that you can hear the echolocation calls as the bat moves through the airspace. But watch the flex on the wings. And look at the turning and twisting that these animals have to do to secure their insects. And they aren't always successful. And here we have going straight up into the air and missing again because predators miss 90% of the time. And bats are an insect predator. So here we have this finally a successful catch in the armpit on its back, rolling forward. You notice that it's using its whole body to capture the insects, not its face, and that's because its mouth is very busy echolocating. So that sort of ability to echolocate, track the insects, catch the insects, get the insects into your mouth and go off all happens up above our heads every night, millions of times, and they don't all come crashing down out of the sky. But if you can think of yourself as a small person learning how to walk, they're doing that only in the night sky. And that's a very steep learning curve, and they do not have a lot of time to get through it. So when we think about our local bats, we have two major sort of, well, we're a species that likes to categorize things. So we tend to categorize bats into solitary versus colonial. So your solitary bats actually tend to live out in the foliage of trees, shrubs. They're out there. You can walk under them. You'll never know they're there. And then our colonial bats form social aggregations in something like a tree hollow or undersloughing bark. And with modern times and modern human architecture, attic shutters, barns, things like that. And the best way to tell the difference is what color is the bat. So if you can see on the left, we have our hoary bat, which is our long distance migrant, who is also a foliage bat. And you can see that it's multicolored. We've got gray and buffy and some russet in there and some black points. And that's all about being camouflage for life outside. On the right, we have some juvenile big brown bats who are crevice dwelling bats, and they're brown because they live in a dark space and they don't need to be camouflaged to break up their outline from predators. They just need to be dark enough that they might not get noticed in a tight little crevice. So solitary, again, with tree bats out in the foliage, and they, the mothers are solitary for the fact they're raising young, so they're entirely solitary. They live in family groups. And again, heavily furred, camouflage for life out in the trees. And here we have our crevice bats. I'm getting a notification that my internet is unstable, so if I'm breaking up, I apologize. Must be the time of night when everyone gets home from work and gets on the TV. Anyway, so these crevice bats live in large aggregations, and you can see all these noses sort of crammed together in this bat box here. And that is what their life is. And those are all females, adult females, who will give birth to the young year, and they need to live like that to support the colonial bat pups. These guys have really complicated social structures. All those bats that are in there obviously know each other, and then if something happens to that roost, they can go move in with the neighbors because they know them too. And there seems to be social kinship networks at work, but also they are found preferentially roosting with companions that are not related to them. So they have what looks like social relationships that are not based and necessarily on familial relationships. So they're able to make friends with the neighbors. And again, it's helpful if your roost comes crashing down because the tree fell over in a storm. It's great if you can go move in with somebody else and they're going to be happy about it. Other smaller group of bats that don't read any of the books and follow none of the rules. And those are what we call semi-solitary. They form small maternity colonies, or maybe a few of them will share a roost. And so those would be like our silver hair bats on the top, and they're migrants. They're turning up now. They tend to be farther north. And then, except where you guys are, you get everything because you're right on the flyway, on the Atlantic Coast Flyway. So everything comes through Virginia Beach. So you've got much higher diversity than I have out here in the Shenandoah Valley. So you'll have silver hairs, and then these little tiny guys, the tricolors, is our second smallest bat. And they also don't form big aggregations and would never be found like under your shutters or in your attic. So how do they deal with the fact that they eat bugs and we don't have bugs all the time? Is they live seasonal lives, just like a lot of our songbirds do. They're either here and then they're gone to go chase bugs somewhere else. And then bats have an additional strategy they can use, which is hibernation. So depending on the species and the season, our species makeup can change with the time of year it is. So right now we are in fall, late mid-fall, and we're moving into winter. So this is mating season for most of our bats. So the males are out there. They are flying around, showing off. There's some evidence big brown bats are actually flying around singing love songs to attract females. Red bats are out there just apparently flying around trying to find a female. And our impression, because they crash to the ground a lot, is that they mate on the wing. And then the females probably dive to the ground either to avoid whoever that guy is who's bothering her, or that might be part of their system. We don't really know. But they have a pretty broad variety of systems globally, but ours seem to be either loose pair bonds or sort of grab the first girl who goes flying by. What's happening at our mouths of our caves, where some of our bats hibernate, is called a swarm, and they gather at the mouth of the caves where the females and the young of the year are going to hibernate. So it's sort of this big meet and greet of whatever bats are using that particular hibernaculum. And it could be not so much around here mines, but when you go farther north, there's a lot of bats using mines to hibernate. So anyway, the males and the females sort of have this big party at the mouth of the hibernaculum, and then the females show the young of the year to go in, and then they drop into torpor and start hibernation, and then the males keep moving down through the hibernacula. So it's kind of an interesting system. So if they're going to hibernate, they need to have constant temperature so they can drop into a stasis and not burn any energy, because burning off the fat they've stored from eating bugs all summer and fall. And then you have migratory bats might be leaving and going south. There are migrants that come here because our winters are tolerable. Out there on the shore, you have bats active all year long. And then, so if we have a cold snap, the bats can use what's called punctuated torpor. Some of our species do this. So if they're not cave hibernators, they can just find a place to hole up for a couple of weeks. And then they can, wake up, grab whatever bugs are around, get a drink of water, and then drop back into torpor. So that's called punctuated torpor. And then the true hibernators are in the caves are similar. And then migrants have migrated out or they're migrating here. So it can, in winter, it's sort of hard to say who's doing what, depending on species. And then everybody returns for the spring, and that's when the females start their pregnancies. So they mated in the fall, they hold on to the sperm, and then when they are back in their summering range, that's when the pregnancy starts. And they do that so that the pups are born when there's a maximum number of insects available to feed them. And that's becoming tricky because of our changes in climate. Like, here we had a terribly cold, And we had terrible pup losses because we think the females just couldn't stay warm enough to support those pups. And then we had a terrible drought, so there weren't enough bugs. So these things are changing. Insect emergencies are changing, the timing of that. So bats are having a pretty hard time just because of a changing climate. And then, so maybe those pupping seasons to maximize insects aren't working so well. And it's important because bat pups grow fast. They are born at about 20% of the mother's body weight. And then she eats her own weight in insects nightly in order to make enough milk to feed those pups because they only have about 6 weeks to hit full size and be trying to catch bugs in the night sky. So I don't know why this video wants to go all the way off the edge of the screen, but you can see this is the pups, two twins inside this hoary, and then you can just barely see that little pup that she's giving a bath to over there. And that pup was just born. So that's not a tiny baby compared to its mother. And you can see at one point, you can see the umbilicus is still attached there. So, and she had two of them. So these moms grow their pups really big to give them as much advantage as they can. And then those pups have to grow incredibly rapidly so that they're ready to be independent in time to get fat for fall and winter. So that in summer, the pups are up and about and the young are growing rapidly. And once they're starting to become independent and they're no longer nursing, so bat pups start flying and foraging while they're still nursing from their mothers because they have to, or else they all starve. So, so once they're good at catching bugs, everybody starts getting fat. And the silver hair bat, I would just like to point out, we got that picture at Back Bay, trying to not step on cottonmouths while we were trying to get the picture of that bat roosting on a bald cypress. But from the picture, it doesn't look like it's great camouflage, but it actually really is on that gray bark with the lichen and everything. So that is a silver hair bat that was just resting during its movements into wherever it needed to be for the fall and winter. So fuel. I hear a lot, especially from people who don't know bats real well, about bats are pollinators. We have to save the bats because they're pollinators. And that is true if you live in the tropics or the subtropics. But it is not true for here. We don't have any pollinating bats. In order to find pollinating bats in the United States, you need to head down to Arizona, Texas, and all throughout the desert Southwest. And we do have these two pollinators. And the one on the right is a very important little bat that not only is crucial to columnar cactus colonies, but is the obligate pollinator of agave. So anyone who enjoys a margarita or a really good mezcal, that is your bat. And that brings up a issue with gardening and well, more with agriculture, but agave is a crop and it's reproduced clonally for the tequila industry. And there's now a blight in agave. And because of the way it's been clonally reproduced, we need to outcross to the wild population, which isn't as abundant as it once was. And so these maintaining the native species, the original species of these plants is actually really important so that when disease issues happen, that outcrossing to older stock or to more vigorous stock is really important. And then the guy on the left here is actually it turns out it's an omnivore. It likes to eat scorpions and centipedes and also pollinate cactus. So super cool bat. It's the pallid bat, and it was just declared the state bat of California. But hey, it's the same video again. Well, anyway, you saw this already, but most bats are insectivores and they catch bugs. So we're going to skip that. And we briefly, we mentioned that they're using echolocation to do it. And that's because if you're catching erratically moving things in the night sky that are very, very small, eyes are not enough. In order for bats to use available light at night to catch insects, they'd have to have huge eyes, like, bush babies and tarsiers and things like that. Well, they don't have huge heads, so they cannot have huge eyes. So imagine like, trying to fit the eyeball of, a lemur into a bat head. It just doesn't work. So they use echolocation, which is shouting into the night sky with ultrasound. So they're screaming and they're listening for the echo of their own voice to come back to them. And that allows them to navigate in total darkness so they can use caves. It allows them to know whether prey is moving toward or away or, crosswise. They use all kinds of really cool acoustic tricks like Doppler effect and things I cannot even begin to explain. But it's really expensive. In order to fly, you're energetically hugely expensive, and echolocation. If you're flying and screaming most of the night, you're really burning up some calories. So they also have to learn not how to echolocate, but how to match their echolocation call and speed to prey and to things like, trees or cave walls or whatever. So you'll see young bats crash a lot. I mean, they do, they just whiff and they might miss the target completely. So speaking of energy, these guys are metabolically just on fire. So this image is thermal imaging of bats in flight. And, the brighter the color in the image, the more energy they're expending. So you can see that thorax where their heart is just burning. And then when you get out toward the edges of the wings, they cool down quite a bit. But they're energetically, they're teeny tiny. So they've already got a hugely fast metabolism. They are mammals, so lactation in mammals is like the most energetically expensive thing mammals do. Flying is energetically expensive, and then that echolocation on top of it. So a female bat who's lactating and feeding young is eating her own body weight in insects every night. And if you consider, say, a 15-gram big brown bat, and you might think, well, 15 grams, that's not very much weight. But 15 grams in insects probably represents hundreds, if not thousands of insects she's taking out of the night sky every night. So if there's any take home point to this is that bats are eating a lot of bugs. And if you think about them not eating those bugs, we would be in deep trouble. So that energy drive is what's keeping them up there. And it also drives whether or not the young are going to do well, which is why we had such problems this year with that cold May, that they probably weren't able to keep the young warm enough to grow at the rate they needed to grow. So even the ones we were able to rescue just have not done real well. So basically animals that are living on the edge. So when they wake up, they're dehydrated just because of their metabolism. And so they need perfectly functioning wing membranes, not just for flight, but to help them maintain their water balance. So those membranes are actually permeable and there's gas exchange across them. But in order to drink, because they're little, they have to skim the surface of the water. They need access to open, still water. And where that comes into play is where we are starting to see like creeks that are channelized, or we've got, new developments being built and whatever waters there is being forced into, culverts and things like that. So, a creek and waterway and stormwater management ponds become really important to bats. And where you are, all that open, clear water, not brackish water, is really important. Those wetlands are crucial to so many animals. And because of all that, the bats are super cool and they're amazing and they're doing this incredible stuff out there at night. And they're really taking on an amazing amount of insect eating, but they're in trouble. So half of our 16 species in Virginia are listed one way or another. So the northern long-ear lives in Virginia Beach. Tricolor bat lives out there. Little brown bat used to live out there. They're pretty much 90% gone, according to the numbers in Virginia. Indiana bats, not a Virginia Beach bat, but out here my way. Small-footeds are out my way. Raffinesques, that's your really crucially fragile bat because population was never high and it's not getting any bigger. And then the Raffinesque cousin, the big ear bat, lives out my way, which is also it's because their habitat's so restricted that they're in trouble. And then the gray bat, which is down in some part of the state, but it's a cave bat, so it's not a coastal bat. But those are the ones right now, but it looks like more are coming down the pike and having trouble. So why, one would ask, why are bats in trouble? The same reason lots of other things are in trouble. You've got loss of forest structure. You've got light levels coming up. Light pollution is huge, huge. It's affecting people's mental health. It affects everything. So light levels are actually something we can control better than some of these other things. I mentioned climate change, changing insect guilds, waterways are being degraded, the structure, I talked about the structure of waterways changing. And then for out this way, cave management is an issue. That's what you guys don't have to worry about caves. You have to worry about wetlands and beaches. Other things that are problems for bats are humans. People tend not to be very pleased when they find that bats are inhabiting their house with them. So there's lots of people who just kick them out in the middle of summer when they've got dependent pups, and those pups don't survive. We've got sprays, people just spraying the bats themselves directly. And then people like squirting hoses at them to knock them out of decks and things like that. Caves, people going into caves and having parties and lighting off firecrackers, not so good. And then general, a lot of fear. A lot of people are afraid of bats, and mostly they're afraid because of rabies. Quickly, bats are not blind carriers of rabies. Not all bats have rabies. Rabies is actually really rare in bats. It's at low levels in the population, but you just can't tell when you're looking at one whether that's the one that has rabies or not. Flying during the day, perfectly normal. Y'all get up to pee in the middle of the night. Bats get up to pee in the middle of the day. I'm not going to go through the symptoms of rabies because it's not important to you, because if you never touch a bat with bare hands, you won't get bitten, and then you can't get rabies. So just remember, anytime you feel that you might need to intervene with the bat, like maybe to get it out of an unsafe space, or one's gotten into your garage and it needs to be out, then protect your hands, protect yourself, and that way you're protecting the bat, because they will bite you. You're giant, they're little. That's just nature. If the giant predator has a hold of you, you're going to bite. So make sure you don't ever get bitten, and then we can all calm down about rabies. Because other things are really much harder on bats than rabies is on us. We've got glue boards. Please don't use them. There's really no excuse to be using a glue board. They're not easier. They're cruel to whatever gets stuck in them, and everything gets stuck in a glue board, in fly strips, in tree bands, woodpeckers, Carolina wrens, bluebirds. I can't think of a bird species that I haven't seen stuck in a tree band or a glue board. I've seen a kitten stuck on a glue board. So these things are not good. They're terrible, and they shouldn't be part of any kind of outdoor pest management, and certainly indoor pest management as well. And then bats are bioaccumulators. Everything goes up through the food web, and bats are apex predators of insects. So anything that's in the insects is bioaccumulating in the bats. And that goes for heavy metals in water, any kind of contaminants like that end up in the bats. And then we have our dear friends, the raccoons and crows, these like really smart predators who now have access to bats because roost structures have changed. Bats living under somebody's shutter are actually much more vulnerable to a raccoon than a bats living in a 500-year-old tree in a tree hollow up above the canopy. So it's sort of like the changes of forest structure are really impacting how safe bats are from these sorts of predators who are benefiting from the way we live on the land. So just something to think about. It's fine to love crows and love raccoons and all those guys. You know, they're just critters too, and they deserve a place in the world. But if you know that you have bats roosting somewhere, let's try and get those guys protected from these other guys who don't really need the free bat buffet. Things that should be helping, like renewable energy. Yay, hooray, except for wind turbines are like whirling knives for migrating bats. So we need to do some work on wind, and offshore wind is an issue too. They've got buoys deployed out there that are picking up bat acoustic calls from all the migratory species. So, nothing's perfect, but it all could be better. So speaking of those migratory hories, 2019, they started to worry about them on the Northwest. And then here's for 2021, talking about a 50% decline in migratory hories because of wind turbine build out. So those are numbers that are pretty scary for animals that are already declining and are in serious trouble. And then, if you haven't heard of it, white nose syndrome, which is a introduced fungus that got in Schoharie, New York in 2007, 6, 7, and they started having mass die-offs of bats. It hit Virginia a couple years later, and again, we've lost 90% of our cave-dependent bats because of this fungus. They've disappeared. They're just gone. And from a single cave in New York, it's now in, I think, might even be more than 38 states and 7 Canadian provinces. So they can't take this kind of a hit. So this is really devastating for our bats. So here's where it started, 2007. There's the iconic picture of a bat with white nose syndrome. That white fuzz on its face is actually fungus. And from that one spot in 2007, here's where we are now. That is a massive and rapid spread of a disease. So these animals are becoming extinct in our backyards and in our lifetimes. And I think that's really profound. We aren't losing honeybees at this rate, and they're not even a native species. Some of our songbirds are in this sort of a decline too, but this one we can actually put our finger on why it's happening. And for funds, we also have an insect apocalypse that appears to be growing, and it might be climate shifting. It could be, pesticide use. We don't know, but it does that insects are actually on the decline. And you may say, yay, but bugs feed everybody. And so I think because insects are so prevalent and they form the base of food chains, and they're probably like the greatest number of organisms, above bacteria and viruses on the planet, we should be worried when they start going away. And then a lesser known but pretty serious issue is the dead bat trade. So I don't know if you've seen it. You'll see them in grotesque shops, and you'll see them Gothic sorts of things. And right now around Halloween, they're sort of being flogged, but taxidermied bats under glass. And the problem with that is these are animals that are being killed just to become decorative displays. And I think that it's something that U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service frowns on, that health departments frown on, but apparently there's no legislative fix for people importing dead bats. And even here in the US, this disgusting looking bat in this little advertisement can be bought. So our children can look at dead bats that have been preserved in something that I don't know if it's good for people or not. But these bats are harvested. They're free tail, so they are a pretty abundant bat, but so are little browns, and now they're proposed for endangered species listing. So I think we really have to question whether killing animals for decorating our walls, or even so our children have the opportunity to look at a dead bat, is that ethically what we want to be doing? And knowing that these animals are long-lived and know things and are undoubtedly raising young when they are harvested, because that's when they're hanging out in the caves in their large numbers. I just think there's some work to be done there, and that's someplace where people can be really effective. Like if you know that your kids or grandkids are in a school and they're talking about using these things, but by all means speak up and talk about why this is not right. And then, you've heard me mention a lot about climate shifting, and it's a problem. I mean, it is having an effect that we can see. And I think that is, it's outside of what anyone's political leanings are or anyone's beliefs about how the world works. I mean, it's reality. Things are moving north that used to stay south because climate is changing. And we're starting to see these lovely free tails now turning up in, of all places, Virginia Beach. They're adorable and they are incredibly intelligent. They're the world's fastest flying animal, not diving or not a peregrine in a dive, but flapping flight. They're fastest in the world. They live long lives. They know lots of stuff, but they also tend to aggregate in colonies in the thousands. So I'm not so sure I'm really excited about them moving into Virginia, but it's the reality. Things are changing and they're here and they're turning up in bigger numbers in coastal areas, but they're coming up the river valleys. So we've seen them along the James River and up into Alexandria and the Potomac watershed. So yeah, they're here, they're coming, things are changing. So, okay. This is where I think things should be conserved and appreciated just because they are. I think bats are wonderful just because they're there and I enjoy them. And I think insects and birds and raccoons and bobcats and all that stuff is just cool because it's what it is. And they're all wonderful if you spend time studying them or learning about them at all. But we like to tie things into what's good for us. And so, conservatively, bat contribution to U.S. agriculture, conservatively, is almost $4 billion a year in pest control. And as some are saying, as much as 57 billion. And it's pest control for big agriculture, for timber industry, and for our backyards and gardens, our home gardens, our small producers who are supplying farmers markets. Pest control, if you're producing anything, even for personal consumption or for enjoyment of the beauty that you can grow in your backyard, is no. I can't keep zucchini going because the squash bugs are so bad here. And this year they're out of phase. Usually my wrens help me with them, and everything came late, and the wrens were done, and so no zucchini from me. But the bats, they're not big on squash bugs because squash bugs don't fly, but everything else that flies, your most of the caterpillars that we would prefer not to have eating our stuff are moths as adults, and bats are getting them. Beetles, leaf miners, hoppers, all those things are out there flying around at night too, and bats are helping with them. And that is over and above the mosquito issue because bats are not really great mosquito control. They will eat them, but they're potato chips, whereas a nice crunchy beetle is like maybe a cheeseburger. So, they're not going to expend a lot of energy chasing a mosquito here and there. But the wetlands that might be hatching up gazillions of mosquitoes, that's where your little bats that are now gone because of white nose syndrome, but that's where those little bats really help take care of that. So the mosquito issue is more about healthy wetlands and appropriate species of bats and less about, geez, mosquitoes bother me. So I just like to put that in people's ears because please don't go slap up a bat box because you want to get rid of your mosquitoes. It doesn't work that way. So what do we do about these crashing and declining bats and that we need to care about just because they are, and also because we would like them to eat some of our garden pests? So just share the love. I mean, hopefully you're here because you were interested in the first place. So that's nice. So speak up, talk about how cool they are and what they're doing out there. And yeah, maybe you can't see them, but just go outside at dusk on a warm winter night and you'll see red bats flying. Go out and hot, steamy night when all the bugs are low and the air is sticky, those bats are out there and you can watch them until it gets too dark. Remember that they are their own beings. They have, friends and a social structure, and they persist for a long time on the landscape if they can. And they're out there doing good stuff for us. Maintain your habitat. if you aren't already, your conservation extension services are they're out there for you. Spotted lanternfly, I know, big problem. So talk to VDAX or go to the VDAX website for control information on control efforts. They don't recommend sticky bands on trees because of the bycatch of the animals that are out there actually already eating those things. And I've seen pictures of praying mantises eating spotted lanternflies, several bird species eating them, spiders getting them in webs. So if they're not terrible tasting, the bats are going to be eating them soon enough. Use integrated pest management. That it's just the best way to do stuff. And then plant natives by all means. Even if you're like an ornamental gardener, just throw some natives in there. You can help through citizen science. There are some bat monitoring things launching that you can get involved in, improving habitat on a grand scale, like, in your parks and your local green spaces, help out with that. You can hang out with partner organizations. And master gardeners kind of go hand in hand with master naturalists. So there's a lot of crossover there. So, and don't forget your local rehabilitators. We're out here trying to save the individuals of these declining species. So there's no point in us doing that if there's not a great habitat to put them out into. So, and just, do your best. That's what I tell you. You don't have to do everything. We don't have to save everything personally, but we can certainly do our best with what we have. And I think just, it sounds grim for bats. It is grim for bats, but we can do stuff. So there's a lot of hope out there. There's work on the wind turbine issue. Not every bat's getting euthanized to be tested for rabies. Lots of people are helping out with bats. Public perception is fabulous. I mean, it's really come up in the 20 years I've been doing this, amazing changes in how people think about bats. So with that, and I also would like to point out that just in the last week, I've talked to one of the rehabbers out in your area, and she's taken in a tricolor bat, state endangered, soon to be federally endangered. She's taken in a hoary bat, migrant, that we've already talked about, maybe losing 50% in the next 4 years or so. She got what we thought was a little brown, turned out to be your local southeastern myotis. So you've got just wonderful bat diversity out there, and these animals need our help. So if you find one grounded, please reach out. TREE is a local rehab group. I forget what that stands for. Tidewater something rescue but anyway, and Evelyn's Wildlife Refuge all handle bats. So please keep their numbers handy. I bet you at some point you will find a grounded bat. I'm going to stop sharing now because I need to switch cameras over so you can meet our other guest. And if you have questions, I think now's the time to start typing them in. And then I'm not going to be able to read the chat directly because I am going to be handling a bat, but I'm sure we will have some help.
Yep, I got you covered on that.
I thought so.
So you did cover this, but the first question we had was asking about the incidence of rabies in the bat population.
In wild populations, it's less than 0.5%. So it is lower. In the numbers tested, there is less rabies in bats than in foxes, skunks, raccoons, and domestic cats. No, I think bats are above skunks. So bats are not the #1 rabies vector in the area. So why they get talked about as if they are is somewhat of a mystery to me, other than people, I think, like to be scared of bats. I'm going to switch my camera while we're chatting.
And then Linda would like to know if you did your own bat illustrations.
No. I am so lucky. We have wonderful volunteers who illustrate for us. I don't know which of the illustrations you're referring to, but we have some of our cartoon characters that turn up on, like in the slideshow, they're by rehabber Kim, and she has her own art studio now called Room for Neon, and she is doing just delightful, funny little animals on commission. And then we have the person who did our logo bat is an artist who actually works out of a tattoo shop in Fairfax. So we're just very lucky that we love tying art and conservation together. So I am putting Birch, I'm moving the camera and stuff around so we can see her a little better. I'm putting Grumpy Birch on camera. Let me see if we can get her focused in a little bit better. So this girl with her grumpy face on is a first-year big brown bat, and she is not particularly happy with me at the moment. But I'm going to go ahead and give her snacks and see if she'll take those and see if she'll forgive me for disturbing her slumber. So we can keep going with the questions while I try and get her situated and keep her on screen.
Is it beneficial to put up bat boxes?
That is a great question. And if I had a truthful answer to that, I feel like I'd be a millionaire. Sorry, I have to switch over here and grab another set of forceps. Those are bent for some reason. But anyway, so maybe. The answer to that is maybe. Bats are really particular about the roosts they use. So if you're going to do bat boxes, I encourage you to, let me see if I can get her to take this. Oh, are you going to eat that for me? Oh, yes. She's eating a mealworm, sort of. Birch. She's like, I don't know what's going on. We've never done this before. Why are you doing this to me? There.
Oh my goodness.
Can you hear her chewing? So while Birch is deciding whether she's actually going to take my peace offerings, we can keep going with, so bat boxes. They need to be big. They need to be 3 chambers or better, because what you're really going for is a maternity colony and not like a single bat here and there. What you want are bats living in a maternity colony, raising their young, because they're the ones who are eating all the bugs, and they're the ones who are losing their habitat more rapidly than anybody else. So do your research, do your homework. Don't necessarily believe everything that's on the internet, because a lot of that was written for little brown bats and we don't have them anymore. So I'm actually hoping to have some better information written up for our website by spring. So you'll be able to check us out and see what with bat boxes.
And I think that this is closely related, whether or not they use bat houses.
Same thing, and some do, some don't. I have occupied bat boxes here, but I also release bats here, and they think of this as home. And it's interesting watching them shift from box to box over the course of a season, and realizing these guys roost shift. When the temperature is not right, they're going to go someplace else. So they might use your bat box for 6 weeks and then be gone. They might stay there all summer, but it's got to be whatever they're looking for, and they won't tell us. We have no idea.
All right, we've got a couple more questions. I am going to launch our poll so that the audience can give us some feedback for tonight.
Okay.
So that's gonna maybe pop up on everybody's screen for a second. And then, so the next question is, if you have bats flying overhead every night, is it reasonable to assume that you have bats living nearby?
Yes, and those bats could be, I'm sorry, I'm trying to get the poll off my screen so I can see what's going on here. Okay, here, I have to rearrange her again. Those bats, mirror, could be red bats that live out in the foliage, could be part of a colony that lives 2 blocks away. It's really hard to get at. The bats are flying around at night where they're originating from. But if they're hanging out over your space, you're doing something right. So keep doing it, whatever it is.
And is there an echolocation tracking app for iPads?
There is
they're only finding them for Androids.
Yeah, so apparently Echometer Touch is probably where people are looking, and that's a really great device. However, apparently the iPhone interface, they don't play nice with developers. So, and it's such a niche thing that there's no economic reason for the phone manufacturers to make it easier. So what you can do is get an Android tablet and use the Android one. So the tablets work fine if you're not, if you're not, oh gosh, I'm sorry, you guys, she's completely out of focus now. If you're not, dead set on keeping all your data on your phone, just go ahead and you can get a Kindle Fire tablet that works really well with the Android one. So that's what I use. So highly recommend it. I'm going to take a minute and just show a few things about Birch. She's wearing a yellow band because that's how she was identified while she was out in the flight cage. She actually sustained damage to her wrist. So she has some damage to the ends of her wings. Oh, let me try, and she's moving around some. So she's that was just a little bit of an echolocation. And where are we going? Oh, now she's really echolocating. And would you like some more? Is this what we were after? Sorry, you guys, I'm terrible when it's mirrored images. Nope. So there's her little feet. I'm sorry, the pole's up in my screen again. Let me move that so I can see what you're seeing. All right, feet, little bat feet, a little bat knee right there. There's the other one right there. There's her knee. And then her wings are actually folded up alongside her body. And her finger, that's her thumb right there in the front moving around. And then these wings, she's like, that's enough of that, lady. The fingers are folded along and then are kind of tucked in under her forearm. Fine. She's like, why are we sitting here not doing anything? All right. So, and then ears, big ears and big eyes. So big brown bats can actually see quite well. All of our bats see well, but big browns actually have pretty big eyes. So they're using them to do stuff. She's not too thrilled about this light shining in them. Any more questions?
Those are all the questions that we have in the chat. I have one.
Okay.
What is I know it's probably different for each species, but do bats have a general range that they'll fly from their roosts?
Yes, that's a great question, actually. And yes, it does vary by species. But big brown bats, we call them homebodies. They only go about 5 miles. Free tails, the one that's moving in, 40 miles a night. And then it's sort of everybody else is somewhere in between there, and we may not actually know. Like we know about big browns because they're pretty common and they've been studied the most. I think she might be falling asleep now. Red bats probably range farther as our locals go. They've been known to jump over mountain ridges to change their nightly range. So they do things that it's hard to tell because it's really hard to get transmitters that are small enough to put on these guys and then go chase them with airplanes. That all gets very expensive. So some of those questions will remain unanswered until we're all fabulously wealthy and can afford airplanes to chase bats.
And then we had another one come in. How many years can a female reproduce?
Another question that's not well understood. We think they're reproductive until very late in life. Like they probably die before or get taken out of the population before they're not reproductive anymore. But we really don't know for sure.
Okay. And then Donna has said in the chat that she has some questions. Donna, do you want to come off mute and ask questions, or you're just handling that through email?
Sorry, I took her off for a second just so I could try and clean this up a minute. Here, Grumpy. All right.
Yes.
Hi, this is Shauna.
Hi.
Hi. I've been emailing with you like last week, Leslie. I don't know if you remember me, but I'm doing the Master Gardener information table.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you your ideas, those electronic files. Can you send those to me? You have some that
Can you just email me and tell me which ones you're talking about? I've got
one? Okay.
I've got tons.
I'll do that. I'll shoot you an email tonight.
That would be great.
And okay, thanks, Leslie.
Oh no, thank you. Thanks for checking in.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to thank everyone who came out tonight, and I also want to thank folks who I recognize here who came from very far away. So I appreciate it, and I'm glad that to be able to present to gardeners, because y'all some of my favorite people, and to be able to talk about bats.
Yes, and thank you very much, Leslie, for joining us tonight. This has definitely been the best view of a bat I've ever had.
I would show you more of her, but they don't like to have their wings pulled open. So, yeah, this is basically when you want to see a calm bat, you see a kiwi-shaped furry object who has a really cute face.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very, very much. And we'll have the recording up in the next week or so. All the other recordings of our talks from earlier in the year are up. So thank you everybody for joining us, and we hope we'll see you again in January. Thank you, Leslie.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.